What up, though? Welcome to part 7. Beauty is to identity, just as bias is to reality. The Negro in the New World. The Negro in the New World by Sir Harry H. Johnston. And by Negro, we mean the American or the American Indian, the only American there ever was, is, and will be. First published in 1910. The Industrial South. There is also a romantic interest attaching to Montgomery, the state capital of Alabama, and once the federal capital of the seceded Confederacy. From the capital of Montgomery was launched the Declaration of Independence of the South from the dictation of the northern states. Let's go over that small portion again. From the capital of Montgomery was launched the Declaration of Independence of the South from the dictation of the northern states. As already stated, the absolutely white population of the 11 ex-slave states is at least 20 millions, as against 7 to 8 millions of colored people, or Americans or American Indians. And it says the absolutely white population of the 11 ex-slave states is at least 20 millions. 20 millions white population. And by white, this could mean humans from Afro-Eurasia, the place you term as Africa or Asia or Europe, Caucasians, whoever was classified as whites in those 11 ex-slave states. 7 to 8 million colored people or American Indians or Negroes or Americans properly. Now this is speaking of 11 states, or what were termed 11 states. As it is, there are laws in existence, and if they are unwritten in the statute book, they are nevertheless just as much in vigor, which would be appealed to should any person attempt to induce Negroes in large numbers to leave the southern states, or even one southern state for another. Public feeling in Alabama and Louisiana, for example, will not allow the Negroes or the American Indians of those states to be recruited for service on the Isthmus of Panama or on the railways of Mexico. This is why the American government, in constructing the canal and other public works in the state of Panama, is compelled to obtain its labor force from the British West Indies, from Spain and Italy, Central and South America. Surely this is a sufficient answer to the foolish Negrophobe writers, chiefly hailing from Virginia and the northeastern states, who advocate the expulsion of the Negro in mass from North America? Why, if this idea were even formulated, the South would rise once more in rebellion against it. For as things stand at present, the South would be ruined if the Negro left it, if the American Indian left it. The Negroes form a large proportion of the population. Americans form a large proportion of the population. For in the adjacent iron mines, about 90% of the labor is American Indian, while the same race furnishes 55% of the coal miners and 50% at least of the men employed in the great steel works and iron foundries. It might be mentioned incidentally that throughout the southern states, 75% of the men employed in constructing and repairing the railroads are American Indians, or as they falsely call them, your ancestors, they call them Negroes. In Birmingham, there are several Negro banks. In Birmingham, there are several American banks. I visited one of them, which was lined with marble and upholstered with handsome woods. There are, as in the other towns of Alabama, American doctors, dentists, haberdashers, modists, shoemakers, barbers, grocers, druggists, and general storekeepers. There are theaters for American Indian people, or they call them colored people, at which only American actors and actresses perform. This book is published in 1910, okay? What did you think was happening in 1910? Again, what do you think was happening in 1910? Did you think this was happening in Birmingham, Alabama? Let's read it how they wrote it. In Birmingham, there are several Negro banks. I visited one of them, which was lined with marble and upholstered with handsome woods. See, understand something. The wave, the masses of foreigners that came here, I said it before and I'll say it again, they were coming to something. Why would they leave nothing and come to nothing? Why would they leave misery and aspire to travel to misery? In Birmingham, there are several Negro banks. I visited one of them, which was lined with marble and upholstered with handsome woods. There are, as in the other towns of Alabama, Negro doctors, dentists, haberdashers, modists, shoemakers, barbers, grocers, druggists, and general storekeepers. There are theaters for colored people at which only Negro actors and actresses perform. Excellent are these performances, usually in musical comedy. How excellent, amusing, and of good taste may be known by those who have witnessed, for example, the performances of the Williams Walker Traveling Company in England or America. There are Negro churches which have cost from 10,000 to 30,000 to build. There is a Negro press, and there are numbers of young Negro or mulatto men and women who are expert stenographers and typists. And by Negro or mulatto or colored, they are referring to the American Indian, the Americans, your ancestors, your great great grandparents, your grandparents, the only Americans that ever were, are, and will be. They're speaking of you. But the main object of my journey to this industrial region was to see the great steel works and iron foundries of Bessemer and Ensley in the distant suburbs of Birmingham, where a large number of Americans are employed conjointly with whites, with Caucasians. See, we have to go over the wordplay because this will confuse some. It has confused us for a long time. But the main object of my journey to this industrial region was to see the great steel works and iron foundries of Bessemer and Ensley in the distant suburbs of Birmingham, where a large number, now this is what is written, a large number of Negroes are employed conjointly with white Americans. See, they call the Caucasian, the foreigner, the Afro-Eurasian, the European. They call them now American. They use American as a surnation to whatever nation they're coming from. The identity theft has already begun. And they call you a Negro. Why? In order to separate you from the soil, even though you are being told here on this page about your greatness and about what you've built, about why America was so attractive to the foreigner, why they spoke so highly of you, of your people. They speak highly of you today. But the main object of my journey to this industrial region was to see the great steel works and iron foundries of Bessemer and Ensley in the distant suburbs of Birmingham, where a large number of American Indians are employed conjointly with Caucasians or Anglo-Saxons in work involving intelligence, strength, courage, and a just appreciation of the dangers involved in the harnessing of the forces of fire, steam, and electricity. Of course, your people were involved in work involving intelligence, strength, courage, and a just appreciation. Your people were teaching the Caucasians. They were teaching them things that they had been doing for a long time. Never have I walked more circumspectly, or at first felt more reluctant to intrude. But the irresistible fascination of the wonderful sights led us on. Led us through a region of machinery hung with mystic blue, mauve, and red lights into a vast space, the roof of which seemed as high as the firmament. The firmament. Now, why would they mention the firmament in 1910? Why wouldn't they say as high as the cosmos or as high as space? Where the increasing roar of steam and flame nearly stunned one to insensibility. Yet this universality of deafening sound was cut from time to time by still more insistent, agonizing yells as of tortured spirits, and one occasional awful alto voice The devil himself, no doubt. Mercifully, the volume of sound lessened. Just as I was feeling I could no longer retain consciousness, yet dared not sit down for fear of being burned up. Then I began to notice there was method amid this madness, that clever Negro devils were at work cutting and shaping amid this madness. Then I began to notice there was method amid this madness, that clever American devils were at work cutting and shaping with huge machinery an endless succession of white hot iron bars, fish plates, rails, and cylinders. That's when your people were building things. It was American made. There was no made in China tag on it. No. I'm sure if you went to China, their products had made in America on them. This is a picture of, it says, Isaiah Montgomery. Isaiah Montgomery is one of the remarkable personalities among 10 million colored people. Isaiah Montgomery is one of the remarkable personalities. Why is it so hard for them to call you who they know you are? Why? We know why. Let's read the line before. It says this photograph is the church and part of the township Mound Bayou, Mississippi. It says in this flat, low-lying region, there is a large mound which may possibly be the burial place of some vanished tribe of Indians. Close by it is a winding creek, sometimes filled with water. Isaiah Montgomery is one of the remarkable personalities among the 10 million American Indian people in the United States at the present day. He is a pure-blooded Negro, a pure-blooded American Indian, originally of Virginia origin, and must now be about 70 years of age. They say there is a large mound which may possibly be the burial place of some vanished tribe of Indians. The only reason they're vanished is because it's a burial ground and they have passed away. Their people still live there. How are the Indians vanished when we're speaking of Isaiah Montgomery, who was a pure-blooded American Indian, originally of Virginia origin? Don't let them fool you. Oh, no. Ba-da-bop. His father was the favorite slave of a Mr. Davis, brother to the president of the Confederate States. His father was the favorite slave of a Mr. Davis, was the favorite employee of a Mr. Davis, whoever Mr. Davis is. You have to find that out. Though a Negro of unmixed origin, like his son, Isaiah must have been exceptionally clever. Listen to this. Though a Negro of unmixed origin, like his son, Isaiah must have been exceptionally clever. Unmixed origin. Can somebody say all American? For in spite of the laws which forbade the education of a slave, he was enabled to learn, more or less by stealth, and from his master, not only how to read and write and keep accounts, but how to become a very accurate land surveyor, architect, mathematician, and manager of an estate. You tell me. Make these things make sense. 20 years later, the estate was sold, and Isaiah Montgomery, with a few of his neighbors, formed a settlement of Negro farmers in the Mississippi Valley. Formed a settlement of American Indian farmers in the Mississippi Valley. When they first colonized the Yazoo Delta about 1888, it must have been exceedingly like Dickens' Eden. For portions of the water of the Mississippi circulating through the land in a network of depressions turned it into a sickly swamp. Such grounds as remained above water were swarming with rattlesnakes. The low, thick woods contained pumas and bears. Lions, tigers, bears, oh my. The low, thick woods contained pumas and bears. When they first colonized the Yazoo Delta about 1888, it must have been exceedingly like Dickens' Eden. For portions of the waters of the Mississippi circulating through the land in a network of depressions turned it into a sickly swamp. Such grounds as remained above water were swarming with rattlesnakes. The low, thick woods contained pumas and bears to an inconvenient extent, and to the constant depletion of the settlers' small stock of cattle and poultry. Alligators came wherever there was water to float them, or even cross dry land from creek to creek. But they were far less dreaded than the swarms of mosquitoes, which, until the forest and the coarse grass were abated, made life intolerable. On the other hand, deer and wild turkeys were so abundant that they atoned for the loss of domestic livestock. It says, but they were far less dreaded than the swarms of mosquitoes, which, until the forest and coarse grass were abated, made life intolerable. See, instead of finding out what you could do, what you could put on your body. No, I'm not talking about no what they call it, off spray, chemical spray, putting it on your skin. Instead of figuring out what they could put on their skin that repelled the mosquitoes, no, let's just cut down all the trees and all the coarse grass and everything that makes this place the Garden of Eden. Look at the photograph here. The illustration, it says, a Negro homestead, Mound Bayou, Mississippi. A Negro homestead, Mound Bayou, Mississippi. An American Indian homestead, Mound Bayou, Mississippi. It's not what you thought, is it? You know why it's not what you thought? Maybe because you never took the time to speak with your people, the older members of your family. Put as much into learning about them as you do into learning about all other superficial things that you learn about. When the game come on, who playing who in March Madness, um, um, how much for the Jordan threes, and all these manner of, who's trending on this, or you know, what's the popular topic today that everyone's talking about and no one knows the truth about. Instead of learning about the American Indian homestead in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, that your people lived on. I mean, it probably still there. It needs some work, but it's still there probably. Who knows? Gradually, in the course of 20 years, the region around Mound Bayou has altered to an astonishing extent. There are vast cotton plantations where there was once thin forest. There are streets of well-built houses, 3 or 4 of which are really remarkable for their architecture and handsome furniture. There is a Negro bank. There is an American bank, the Delta Bank. There are 1 or more cotton ginneries, and a large oil mill is under construction for the manufacture on the spot of cottonseed oil. Within the principal settlement of Mound Bayou, there are 4 churches and as many schools. And as many schools. Listen to the details of these things. They just may go against what your indoctrination has programmed you with. The largest of the churches serve, as do most of these edifices, as church, lecture hall, theater, council hall, and center for a debating society. Do the churches serve those purposes today? Its interior is entirely lined with varnished pine planks, exceedingly well fitted, and giving the interior a handsome appearance, especially when lit up at night by oil lamps and chandeliers. 2 of the handsomest houses in the town were constructed by a firm of white builders, but all the rest of the houses, the banks, the churches, and schools were erected by Negro masons and carpenters. But all the rest of the houses, the banks, churches, and schools were erected by American masons and carpenters. There are good stores in the town selling most things except alcohol. Selling most things except firewater. See, that was left to the foreigner. On the other hand, a white man temporarily sojourning in Mound Bayou in charge of a gang of railway workers did not entirely endorse my optimistic impressions. He spoke in the highest forms. He spoke in the highest terms of Mr. Isaiah Montgomery and the leaders of the community, who are mostly old men or men of middle age, and who are hard-working, trustworthy, and moral. But he declared the young people to be the reverse. Away from the immediate precincts of the towns, he spoke of crime, of robbery, with violence being constantly committed, and of much immorality amongst the young men and women. The young people, he said, were spoilt by book education, cared nothing for farming, and wished to drift away to life in the towns. The story of our lives, right? Right? It's almost sad, right? Damn. The way that described, man, let that resonate. Mm. Don't forget, when he's speaking of the young, this is published in 1910. So when he's speaking of the young, he's speaking of when your great and great, when your great or great grandparents were the young people. They were the reverse. Away from the immediate precincts of the town, he spoke of crime, of robbery with violence being constantly committed, and of much immorality amongst the young men and women. Now listen to this. Listen to what he said was the reason he thought for that was. Listen, the young people, he said, were spoilt. Listen, by book education. Book education. Fuck a book. Cared nothing for farming and wished to drift away to life in the towns. Let's shake it. And drift away to life in the towns so we can see some shake. The crimes of violence, murder for robbery by Negroes against Negroes in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. The crimes of violence, murder for robbery by Americans against Americans in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana are unhappily very frequent, though perhaps proportionately not so numerous as they are among the Italian settlers. See, y'all didn't just start being a problem. Niggas always been a problem. But see, it was a problem that was amplified by what? By book education. Moving away from the soil. Moving into the towns. You know, getting mixed up with the settlers. You know, it says that the crimes were unhappily very frequent, though perhaps proportionately not so numerous as they are among Italian settlers. So when today these Italian settlers or these foreigners complain about the things that you do and they don't want to live next to you, and they saying, oh my God, the Negro problem, the nigger problem, the black problem. Why are they here? Why would they come here and have to deal with this problem? You know why? Because it's a small portion of the population. And it's not as bad as they are. They never told you that. They try not to tell you that they're bad as well, or that they are the ones who are causing problems. No. And now, with the propaganda machine, it's very easy to make it seem like you always the problem. Say it ain't so. The champion speller of the whole of the United States in the 1908 competition was a little Negro girl of Tennessee. The champion speller, of the whole of the United States in 1908. Find out what the United States consisted of, which territories it consisted of in 1908. The champion speller of the whole of the United States. Not a community, not a ward, not a town. The whole of the United States, the champion speller of the whole of the United States in a 1908 competition was a little American Indian girl of Tennessee. Do the right thing.